asceticism, but we have to include discipline. So he makes a big distinction between mortification and discipline. Mortification, that comes from the word mors, mortality, death. It means like dying to aspects of ourselves, killing parts of ourselves. That's much of the asceticism you read about sounded as though people wanted to kill their instincts. You know, you had to just repress them, keep them all down, so that they wouldn't get in your way of coming closer to God. So we see many of the saints doing that. They beat themselves with heavy chains and so on. They blocked out sexual fantasies at all costs. You know, all sexual fantasy had to be kept out. The sexual side had to be killed in a sense. Go on like that. So that's what Fox is upset about, is mortification like that, of excessive and rigid control of emotions. So that the way to control this jealousy is never to think about it. Never entertain it. Don't let it in my consciousness. Fight it. I know people who deal with anger that way. They're always tired, and I know why they're tired. Always tired. They're tired. They're very nice people. You meet them, they don't yell at anybody. They're very civil. They never raise their voice. They never confront anybody. But all their energy goes into keeping that anger bottled up. So all the energy is keeps it bottled, and they're very nice people. The only thing that happens is now and then it breaks out in a sudden burst, and then you feel guilty about it and let it out. So that's what Fox is saying he doesn't want, is this desperate effort to control feelings of the dark forces. But what is it that we could be doing? Might be going under the heading of discipline. Discipline suggests effort and intelligent work and programmed activities that allow us to be freed up to function more effectively. So disciplines are done not for the sake of putting ourselves down or making life difficult or because they're hard. They're done for the sake of liberation, done for the sake of freeing us up so that our potential, our good side will get released to do something good for others and good in our world. The disciplined life is one in which the practices are there. I mean, it might mean not eating. It might mean praying extra hours. It might mean reading the scriptures. It could mean a whole lot of other things, but they're done for the sake of growth. So discipline seems to be an important part of it. Thirdly, Fox's thing again, not cling, glorify, or follow in pain, but his phrase, let pain pain. I've got a heavy thing to deal with. I think of the man who came to these things before, Earl Harris. Earl's famous quote that I'll repeat is, he was a terrible physical wreck, a mess, terrible suffering. And Earl once said, well, it's only pain. I've never gotten over that. I don't think I ever will. It's only pain, Earl said. Earl said there was something else. I mean, to keep the mind alive, keep the spirit alive, he said. That's what counted. So that's only pain. Something more important than pain, that is being mentally alert and seeking truth and so on. Those are more important than all this. It's only pain. What does this mean? Fox says, let pain be pain. I think I paraphrase, embrace it in order to let go of it. I got only one reference point for this, for myself. I mean, I feel very embarrassed by this. My mother and I went to the same dentist. My mother had all of her, she has millions of cavities in her mouth. So my mother would go there. Did she ever take Novocaine? No. She goes, I'm drilling all day in her mouth, I go in, I have a cavity. I take Novocaine. Are you sure that's your mother? No, we're going to need Novocaine for this? So I'm not at ease with this whole thing. The only reference point I have for whatever this might mean is my own experience of being raw, which too many of you have heard me say too often, but I repeat it for anyone else. That is, I went through 12 Rolfing sessions, which is 2 more than people usually go through. And Rolfing is that thing like some big guy, very strong, takes his elbow and puts it in your thing as hard as he can, like this, and tries to somehow mess up your muscle memory. Contrary to rumors, I did not do this in order to improve my golf swing. But I did go through this. I mean, you pay the guy $80 to do that to you for an hour and a half, something. But anyway, I was raw. Huh?
Yeah, Novocaine.
Yeah, there's no Novocaine. But the thing you learn about Rolfing is, this comes from a Swiss psychiatrist, Ida Rolf. I don't know if you know her, that's where it all stems from. But it is an interesting thing. It's very painful, I will tell you that, especially when they come up on your ribs and try to get up to your shoulders. But the point being, what you learn, yeah, this is mortification. What you learn is that the more you fight that, the more painful it is, and that is their words. If you sort of lean into it, it doesn't hurt quite as much.
And that's why you do it.
Why do you do it?
Yeah.
Mortification. Why did I do it? It's to destroy my muscle memory. So, no, I did it because of fact. That's right. Well, they do it all over. They attack a different muscle group each time you roll. The worst are the feet. The feet,
Did it help?
no. Except it gave me an experiential base. What Fox said, embrace in order to let go, let pain be pain. And the feeling was that if you didn't fight it, and you sort of went with it, like almost lean into them, then it didn't hurt as much. I mean, it's the same thing like if you're cold, some people when they're cold go like this. You know, but there's another way to be cold is to be cold. Yeah, just be cold. Oh, that's nice. I mean, when you're out freezing to death. Really, I mean, there's a way in which to fight some of the pains, and there's a way to get into them. That's the only base I have for this. I told you I don't feel very comfortable talking about that. One thing that it would do, that if we're in dealing with our own pains, it helps us to become more empathetic for people who are. I think it's very important not to talk glibly about all of this. And then this, to the greater emphasis, psychic pain. I believe that it is helpful to, well, this falls in the field of cognitive therapy generally. There's a book, Burns. It's one of these health books that I find helpful, and that is, it's called Feel Good. A guy by the name of Burns. Now, his theory is that what causes the pain in life is precisely our interpretations of it. We understand it, that we bring on our pains ourselves by the way we think about it. So we begin to universalize, the simple example that he uses, you did one bad, and therefore you say, I'm a person. Therefore you're around feeling, instead of feeling bad for one bad thing, you feel bad because you're a bad person. And therefore you universalize a thing like that. Do that, it's faulty thinking. And we can do that in 100 ways where somebody doesn't say, she doesn't me. Stop it, she doesn't. What Burns' theory is that we bring on that psychic pain on ourselves. There's no do it and way to cut through it early on. I have a therapist friend who says that dealing with anger This again is part of the cognitive thing, but there's two ways to sort of about anger. One is to express it, and when some bugs you, you wait till you get home, and then you hit a pillow for a half hour and put it out. And there's a lot of good that I often encourage people to do that. The way is to sort of disengage it early on. That is, very beginning things start to catch the first signs. The theory of this is you got to catch the first signs when you're starting to get angry and disengage it early on. So as soon as you play with it too much, then it will build and take you over. So the great wisdom is to see when this painful emotion is coming on. I recognize the anger, and I recognize that I can deflect it in certain ways, which will help me to deal with it in better fashion. So I'm talking about physical pain, psychic pain, and whatever this means to embrace it in order to let go of it. Let pain be pain. Let me wind this up so we have some other time here. Next major point was the importance of admitting our sinfulness, asking forgiveness, and getting on with it. In other words, instead of saying I'm not a sinner, to start out by saying I'm a sinner in a particular way, and here's what I intend to do better, and I believe that God forgives me as soon as I try to face up to it. That's the opposite of saying, well, it's not my fault, it's her fault, obviously. And if she would get her act together, she and I could get along better together. It's the opposite of saying, it's the opposite of saying, no, where's my fault in it, and now how can I do better? And lastly, just to warn ourselves about the dangers of projection onto others and to begin to try to deal with others based on who they really are instead of who we think they ought to be or the bad things we think about them. All those could be elaborated, but it's time to do something else. Anyway, there we got some practical ideas, it seems to me, about what it would mean to move forward in the spiritual life by befriending the darkness. I'd like to invite time to do that, to process this. Again, let's do it the same way. If people want to discuss, you can gather together to do that. And if people want to go outside and process it or whatever. Let's give ourselves, how about till quarter of?
This is just again about terminology, but I think the term darkness itself can sometimes get us in a little bit of trouble in equating or associating darkness with negative, idea of the negative experiences in our lives. And sometimes that's carried over to people of dark skin that people of dark skin become somebody with fear.
You have an alternative phrase that you can use to describe the reality?
Right. Well, I don't know if negative question is, negative can be what we have.
Well, you see, the word darkness is good in my mind in a lot of reasons because it encompasses the mystery side. In other words, if you take sexuality, what do you want to say about human sexuality? Well, you don't want to say it's negative. And yet, it's something that we have a great deal of difficulty coping with. And it causes all kind of, there's a mysterious quality to sexuality. So, I mean, you could say the mysterious forces, but then that doesn't capture the sinful side. The word darkness is helpful because it captures two kinds of things at least. One is sinful things and one is unknown things.
But again, do you feel just a little bit uncomfortable with that?
No, I don't. No, I don't. Nor even when after you say the reason, I don't. No, it doesn't bother me. But I'm not tied to it either. I mean, I think it's good, but could be other ways of saying the reality. Maybe got to use more than one word.
Okay,
but I like and that would be another way of doing it. You could say, well, we got to deal with sin and we got to deal with a lot of other things like earthquakes and sexuality.
Well, there are some people with dark skin who are offended by always using the word darkness in more of a negative or mysterious.
Well, I mean, it might be, but there are also, strong movement to speak about black is beautiful, and to talk about black as, in a positive way. There's a whole movement by what we now call black people in the United States to appropriate the word black in a positive way. There also is a movement to talk about Afro-Americans, to try to work it out. But I don't, most of the stuff you read about that today is not because they're upset with the word black, but they're upset with, what they want to do is a more positive retrieval of the cultural heritage. Like we got Italian Americans. So I don't have a problem with it.
But there are some people who are concerned about this.
Really?
Yeah.
Black people?
Definitely.
They don't want to be called blacks?
They don't like the word darkness being used in a negative term in literature and music and general conversation.
No, there's certain problems that seem to me. Darkness. If people walk into a dark room, they're very often afraid. People are more afraid to walk in a dark room than into a lighted room. There's something built into that. Because you can't see in the dark. And therefore there's unknown things there. So it's not an arbitrary use of the word. It's like, the whole of the scriptures play with that interplay, the light shines in the darkness and so on. And it is one of the most common human symbols used, the interplay between light and darkness throughout all religions. So it's built in. It's not an arbitrary, it's not like you use pink or something.
I do understand that.
No.
I know that
Darkness is
there.
scary. Probably worth thinking about.
Recently, literature, I'm very interested. And all of them have unavailable therapy, I get the trying to the physical work.
I noticed that Matthew wants to put it right section that we do it now is befriendly activity. So he sees that as part of art medicine. And that, yes, he's big on it. And they're right here in college. Happy to school. Yeah, you could talk about that in many different ways, I think. The first one would be the most modeling and important are people's spiritual growth. I'd also talk about it in terms of pleasure and goodness of spirit. You were linking with the golfing is common use, has both a psychological and a physical dimension. It's also a good thing for people.
I really was thinking it was talking about golfing, it made me think.
It's almost one want to call it Maj.
I'm a therapist in my
Yeah.
and I wonder.
Raw?
And the massage is a treat.
Yeah.
How it
Yeah, I know that people in our diet, Sister Hines does also, and it's thought of, it's, part of the spiritual, I doubt, there are little creatures integrated with the Bible and absolute central. Some people do, it gets them going, makes them feel more greater or whole, or gets tension, a lot of it's connected stress, getting rid of tension and so on. And it's also connected in with the idea of touch, which is most important. The healing memory. It is very important with patients to be touching them. I remember in the hand, AIDS, and he was an AIDS patient, and he went on to as holding us, telling that, and it meant so to him, as he telling himself, since I told him, that when as telling that I didn't draw from him, maintain the touch. It was very important. Because that's why he decided to be what during the moment it was because you verbally say something that the body would discount a lie. I would say, that bothered me is withdraw. What do you think he did it as part of the thing? He said that would trust me to talk about this something. So, other example, I would work with or ill, know that. Pray with full love, touch them, and forth, there's healing, goes on, a kind of situation. So that's another mention in the Bible as we discover. The idea of the anointed sick, and just a last thing before people are going to die, a whole lot of effort to for people. One thing I found to be very powerful in the anointed sick is gather a large group or the family or relatives, friends, and then everyone takes laying hands on touch. And that thing is it means nothing. It's not just symbolic. It seems something real happens. It's really knowledge about people touching all that. So I think it fits into the know about a holistic spirituality. Jackson mentioned in this section about calls it under the heading of as meditation. He talks about the Messiah one way of thinking. Well, as I stand it, it's been since I've read it all, I recall, it's almost totally fictional. He's talking the psyche. And the fear is that we created a lot of it, our negative thinking. Someone's walking around that self-image, think they're a terror person, but they're creating that. No, God didn't make that way. That's what we're seeing. Goodness about nature, about creation, who we are, with the fact that this process can block that. I always think badly of yourself. It's like self-washing like that. You brush yourself that you're no good. You can't do something. Therefore, what the therapy is, to get you around that. The therapy is about trying to get to see how much you do to yourself. I just looked through, a couple of weeks while you came a few days ago. I can believe I realized how much negative thinking I do. Which is a negative time going on in this person's head. I can't just like me, can't handle it. A cassette tape on the head with a negative message. What this tries to do is get you to write down. So you're aware, you start thinking, and the logical factors in that. So, and get to recognize them early, what he wants you to do. Get to see what first when you illogical or irrational, put yourself through something. See when you get, and then substitute a positive thought at that time. It's a very kind of realist kind of therapy. But notice that people have very capacity doing it. And dealing with people over here, feel that people are more connected in between head and heart. We do not have a extent of that. Human beings. Human beings, some are very fit in. In other words, they get into therapy to see that themselves. I think like that, and they're thinking like that. You feel better. Other people, you get that all day long, and there seems to be connection. They can't get there. They can't seem to influence their emotions. Well, you need other kind of. I think other things that get people in with it, see the result of it, how it's developed historically, where it came from, over the bad relationship and friendship. Very often, people deal with other groups where they will be out and they get good feedback. So recently just started going to, do one of it, the Dale Biggie course. It's just what us and need is perfect because positive people all the time get up. People, what you do good, heard anything good all their life. And it was excellent, just what she did, the Dale people. So, various different kind of things that we need. And please, for most of the fine therapy works for our kind of approaches that seem to be effective. Get the anger tonight. I have a lot of they deal with anger with the football, and they get it out, and they learn to, and they release. And if you ask them or you hit the pillow, did it make you feel? Yeah, I felt better. I didn't yell at them, and it was better. Other people, I remember telling one professional man, he tried it, he punching bag, and the doctor happened to be a doctor, almost broke his hand trying to this bag and get out. It didn't do one good. He got worse. And the image that we came to between was talking about, it was like inside him, there were two live wires. And as soon as live wires engaged, he off and run. The hand's going, there's nothing to do. He could punch bag all night and move hands, and it didn't really do any good. This release idea is doing. But his clue became, don't let the wires engage. Just never let them engage. You can feel they're starting to get together and spark, get them apart. Don't let them engage. And I think that, it's another brand of dealing with the darkness that we call anger.
Where do common grudges fit into this?
Yeah, I think that that's a perfect example of something that, in my image, poisons our systems. To hold a grudge, Jesus was such a wise therapist. forgive your enemies turns out to be one of the smartest things human beings can do. And we have empirical data now to support this, the wisdom of Jesus' teaching. You must forgive your enemies. If you don't forgive your enemies, it becomes one of the great predictors of people's health problems, of not being able to. There's a study, Martin Seligman, who did studies of depression and so on, has thoughts along that line. And when you won't forgive and carry the grudge, then it's going to do bad things not only to your psyche but to your body. And so we have to learn to get beyond that. Now, how do we get beyond it? We don't pretend that we can forget. And, you know, I deal with a number of abused people who, I mean, they can't forget they were abused, but they're not going to make progress eventually until they can forgive. That's part of what they have to do. They have to forgive even the people who abuse them. That's Jesus' teaching of it. Us forgive the enemy, even the people who did bad things to us. And it turns out to be physically, psychically, the worst thing you can do. It becomes great motivation. See, it depends, like I can forget this guy abused me. But what you can do is move beyond it, try to get to a stage where sort of allows that person to begin again. And I think great therapy is to say, this grudge just hurt me. Why should I keep doing this? And again, a lot of Mike tells me, nobody to support this, but that people make decisions about that. And when people have a strong anger can hurt, they're here, and they get over here, and somehow it's better, I ask, how'd you get there? Always ask, how'd you get there? So often that somebody say something like this, I just decided it wasn't good for me. I decided I didn't need it anymore. I didn't need that anymore. I don't need to be angry at parents anymore. I don't need it to be more than I could do it anymore. Almost like decided. Now, I mean, I don't understand that, but I know I've heard that from so many people. It's like you can let go of things. And there's a lot of indications in the gospel that, I mean, that that's what we're supposed to do. And you know, people have to play with that. What does that mean? It's say, I decide I won't be angry at them anymore. I myself think that you can do it. A lot of times I'll tell people, when they come into me with a big problem like that, I tell them, hey, you can solve this in about 5 minutes. Let go of it. Forgive them. Let's get on with it. And there are a certain percentage of people who do it. Just one fell swoop, boom, that's it. There's other people who just can't seem to do that. They have to struggle with it, work through it, go, try hard, everything. But still, when they get from here to there, that's what I think they end up doing. I think so. Part of it, intensity of pain, and also the subtle reasons for hanging on to it. Subtle reasons for hanging on to it. And those are the things that people have to look at. Why would I want to hang on to the pain? What do I get out of it? And like I said, the most subtle one of all is that it violates justice to give it up. I think that's really subtle and powerful.
I found that the shorter you do it, the better off you get to it. But if there is anger, it goes up. You eliminate it.
Yeah, that's the theory of don't let the live wires get together.
It's tough to get into that habit.
I have a therapist who tells me that it's better not to use this pillow technique or, you know, the traditional getting it out technique because you're just fostering it. What you ought to do is learn so that it doesn't build up to begin with. And don't let the live wires touch inside. I don't need it. Don't need the anger. Yeah. That it's what? Yeah. Well, Jesus, never said it was easy, I don't think, but he did call upon us to do it, and there's not not only did Jesus do it, but it's put forward as what the disciples should do. You ever notice the story of Stephen in the gospel exactly follows what Jesus did? In other words, Stephen's being stoned to death, taken outside the city as Jesus was, being executed as Jesus was, and then he commends his spirit to God as Jesus did, and then he says the same thing as the Lord said, Father, forgive them. Forgave the executioner. So the gospel claim isn't that just master should do it, not just that he told us would, but that it's possible because the first one did it, Stephen. There's a clear, that's incidental that story is told like that you've got all the same notions that you in the life of Jesus. Stephen's put forward disciple. Disciples supposed to. There's no doubt in the Judeo-Christian tradition we are called upon to do that, and that there's a suggestion it's possible to do it, because we had a flesh of person other than Stephen who did it. And we see it throughout history. And I know that there's people who think it's only not possible, but it's destructive to try. I'm persuaded the other way, that it's very wise to try. Psychically, physically, it's good for our mental health to try and move in that direction.
Are there people who criticize this theology by saying that embracing the darkness and accepting reality just kind of breeds passivity, and people who don't work towards social justice and just accept the wrongs of the world without a struggle?
Yeah. Yes, there are. There's a lot of great criticisms of Matthew Fox's whole spirituality. Incidentally, there's a journal coming out, and I promised people I would mention this, the editors of the journal, which has a whole series of articles that will be coming out in another month or so criticizing Matthew Fox's whole approach. I've been able to read this, and I'm not allowed to show it to anybody, though. And Matthew Fox wrote the last article in the journal. It's called Illuminations, and it's coming out of Chicago. And I was asked, they gave me a copy ahead of time that I was able to read, and but under the proviso that I would tell everybody here, I told them I had to have this before today, and so they got it to me, and the proviso was that I would tell everyone about this journal. So anyone who wants that, and I can give the name and address where you write to get it. But the point of it all is, yes, there's a lot of criticisms of this whole spirituality, and I must say the issue is, I'd say the word devastating is close to what is done to Matthew Fox's work in this journal by other scholars. However, I didn't intend to get into all of that, or all of that's filed away in my head and in note form, but my whole approach here was to be positive about what he has to say. What I've tried to do is put it in a framework that I think avoids those potential problems. Now, the big thing about Matthew Fox is, you have to remember, is his driving passion is to link mysticism and prophetism, to link prayer and social justice. Thus, his fourth way is befriending the new creation, which his whole spirit is an effort to work for justice. So that Matthew Fox would say that his whole approach undercuts that, and that if you follow through on his whole methodology, that won't be a trap. Now, there's a liberation theologian who wrote in this journal, very critical of Fox, saying that in his early work, I was allowed to use these ideas, I just can't let anybody see the material, but in his early work, that Fox had that together pretty well, that he understood that the spiritual life shouldn't be just too private, and that it had to be concerned about justice and making the world better, but that in his later writings, he's tilted more and more until all the mystical side and the personal spirituality side has gotten so big that the justice side has gotten lost. And it ends up just what you're saying here, that you would end up in passivity. And Fox, of course, denies that, but that's the feeling of some theologians of what happens. And all of that is very delicate. But Fox's own life drive, all the people who make a splash in the world usually have a passion. And his passion has been stated from the beginning as to show how those two things go together. Prayer and action in the world, prayer and justice, mysticism and being the prophet. So I think in a sense it's a little unfair to accuse him of not doing it at all, because that's what he's really trying to do. Whether he's done it well or not is another story. I think by keeping it sort of a larger framework here, it does work. I'm conscious of time. If I'm going to say anything about this next section. Is there another final comment?
No, I
Well,
did.
the point about not railing out these guys, where I put king that and do prayer.
Yeah.
Someone just, the SOB, why did you set me up this way? And recognizing the guy did say something.
Yeah, very good point. And I don't remember the exact context. I remember using the phrase, but the idea of anger at God really has to be factored into the dark forces. Very important. And example, funeral, youngster dies, some people there, parents, whatever, are in protest. They're in anger against God. And the Psalms in our scriptures are some of the best prayers to deal with that. So the psalmist is able to protest against God and to express the anger. And I think it's absolutely essential that there be words put on that. So if I'm doing a funeral and I know some people there are angry at God, I will surely try to incorporate that into the homily, that this is part of what's going on here, that anger against God, protest against death is part of what's happening, and that therefore that needs to be given expression. That is a dark force that becomes almost the scariest one to deal with at all, because one's sitting there thinking, if I really get angry at God, then I'm really done in. Now there's irretrievable now. I remember helping someone during Lent who wanted to pray but couldn't pray because they were so angry with God. And my answer to them was, well, simple. Just spend Lent talking to God, telling him how angry you are at him. That becomes the substance of your prayer then. So I think that's absolutely essential. And you can't deny anything that's real about ourselves. I mean, you never get any place in spiritual life by pretending. So if we're angry at God, you have to admit it and begin to deal with it. Talk about that. But I don't think you'll solve it again without a comprehensive notion of God which encompasses the tragedy. But I'm glad you brought that up. It's really crucial. That's one of the biggest, scariest dark forces we can have is our very anger against God. And people who got a deep rage, almost invariably it turns out to be against God. And if you let them free float while they hit the pillow, just free flow is who you're angry at. Who is it? And you start going, very common. It's life. It's everything. It's God. Whoever's responsible for this. Yes, sure. River Niger. You ever want to get a catharsis along this line? The Black Clay, the River Niger. Main character finally rails against God, and just everything's wrong in his life. And finally he says, he just looks up at heaven and he yells, he says, "You fucking bastard, when I get up there I'm going to put my hands around your throat and I'm going to demand that you tell me why." I mean, it is powerful. That's the big point. The demand to tell me why. I mean, that's, there's that anger before us. Catharsis for the audience very often. Pardon me?
The outcome later on,
Well, I mean, I think that what we find very often, I mean, in naming the protest and in talking like that, is precisely how you come to terms. It's not unlike the way we deal with other people. Someone's really upset you, and you go tell them how angry you are at them. I mean, usually, there's an overall person. Very often, something good can happen out of that. I think it's the same. I think that's our experiential base for understanding what might happen with God. Well, God is always forgiving. Pardon me? Oh, yeah, yeah.
Move on to tape 3.